A little over a year ago, I stood in this very parking lot and explained why I bought a Bolt instead of a Tesla, specifically a Tesla Model 3. I came up with a whole list of arguments, and it was one of my most watched videos. And then, well, this happened. The video that we shot for this channel about why I got the Bolt instead of a Tesla did very well. It's one of my more popular videos, and we love this car. This car has been very, very good to us and will continue to be very good for us. And fear not, Bolt fans, our Bolt isn't going anywhere. In fact, we'll have a 36,000 mile review coming up very soon. Circumstances being what they are, we have added another EV to our home personal fleet, and this is our new to us Tesla Model 3. I'll tell you a little bit of why we got it and how we got it and what some initial impressions that we have of the car are. So if you're familiar with our channel, you know that we do road trips in our Bolt, and we've made a few comments over the last few videos about a road trip we have coming up in the fall from North Texas going all the way to Charlottesville, Virginia. It is 1,288 miles one way. And when we used to take a road trip to Sevierville, Tennessee over the last 2 years, the Bolt could do it in 2 days. Well, I can't take more days off of work. 2 days there, 2 days to get there, 3 days there, 2 days to get home. I can't take more time. Have to do an extra 400 plus miles in the same amount of time. And I shot some videos on which cars could do the road trip best, and it turned out that the Tesla Model 3 could do it. If you've been paying attention to EV news, you know that a few months ago, Hertz Rental Car decided to sell off a whole bunch of their EV fleet, the vast majority of which were Teslas. And that put a lot of used Teslas on the market that were fairly inexpensive. Now, the first thing that Hertz did, apparently, I'm guessing on this based on what I saw, the prices and the cars that were available, that the older and higher mileage units were the first ones that they decommissioned. And those were like more miles than I was interested in. I didn't have a great experience with a 2019 Model 3 with over 120,000 miles on it. It was a good car, but it had some shortcomings, and I talked about them in that video that I mentioned about why I got the Bolt. But as months went on, those older units went away, and some slightly newer units with slightly less miles came on, and for a nice little 2 to 3 week window, Hertz had a large selection of Tesla Model 3s that had reasonable miles on them that were under $25,000 for the selling price. That meant that it could qualify for that $4,000 federal EV tax credit on used EVs. Well, Rachel and I discussed it, and we decided that the time was right to try to get one of these Teslas that could be purchased for under $25,000 that didn't have a huge amount of miles on it. And we decided that first we needed to sell our last remaining gasoline-powered car, our 2019 Subaru Crosstrek. The process of that took a few days. We went through a company called GiveMeTheVIN.com. It was really seamless. It was really easy. They gave us a fair price on the car. And when we went to drop the car off to get our check for it, I was thinking, well, here comes oh no, there's this scratch and there's this little bit of hail dent, and so we're gonna have to knock $1,000 off. There was none of that. Pre-agreed price, we were in and out of there in 15 minutes, and then off we went to Hertz Car Sales. Before we considered Hertz, we considered going through the gentleman I've interviewed in Kansas, Ty Hoffman at his dealership, but I really wanted to get my own eyes on the car, give it an inspection myself with my own eyes, get my hands on it, and Kansas was just too far away for me to do that. And the prices at Hertz were very competitive. We went up to the Hertz dealership in Bedford, Texas. They had one long-range Model 3 and one base Model 3. We went for the long range, took it out for a test ride, and had an ungodly amount of wind noise. It was a beautiful car. It was the blue, which I thought was my preferred color, but the wind noise was terrible. We thought, well, maybe it's just the seals. We'll replace the seals. It's a it's a retired rental car. It's not going to be perfect. We're fine. And so we started the process of buying that car. At one point, while they were transferring or getting some of the paperwork ready, I went back out to look at the car, and I noticed that somewhere right around here, the door and the fender didn't line up on that blue car. I'll try to stop the clip that I got of that car. And then I noticed that the fender area right here didn't seem to have clear coat paint on it. And it looked to me like a slapshod piece of body repair. The car had a clean Carfax, and so that was a little sketchy. Went in, told the sales associate, who went, "What?" and came out, saw it, immediately got the general manager. The general manager came out and saw it and said, "Yeah, I can't sell you this car." And that about floored me. I thought at any type of used car dealership, they would say, "Oh, it's no big deal. You can get that fixed. It'll be fine. Let's go in and sign the paperwork." No, this general manager said, "No, I can't sell you this car. This car needs to go off to auction because this is not going to meet our standards." That really brought them up in my own estimation. I hated that we couldn't get the car, but that wind noise would have driven me nuts, and not being able to shine up the fender would have driven me nuts. And it even had a little fold right here from a bad Bondo job. What they think happened was, since it was a rental car, that the rental car company got the car back damaged and did a quick repair so they could get it out into service. And the Bedford dealership had one more Tesla under that $25,000 price range, and it was a base, but they already had another customer on it. They were selling 3, 4, 5, 6 of these a day at the time. And so they were getting down to the last ones that they had that were under $25,000. So I loved working with these guys, and I wanted to continue working with these guys, but I told them, "Look, your dealership in Dallas still has some." And they said, "Well, we're the same company, just go on." They won't trade with us because they're going fast. So we went to the Dallas location, which is really in Mesquite. First car that we looked at was a base model. It was blue. It was the deep blue that I liked. We got in, the steering wheel had been messed up. It turns out, especially good tip if you're looking for used Teslas and you're considering buying a rental, if somebody had used hand sanitizer and they then started steering on the vegan leather wheel, and they did that frequently, it will start to peel the surface. That wasn't great. They knew, the Hertz lot knew it wasn't great, so they had put a steering wheel cover on it, and right behind it, I saw this red one, and I didn't think that the red was a color that I would prefer until I saw it in person, and it just popped. And I said, "Well, let's take this red one out first." We drove the car, enjoyed the ride. It was fine. It didn't have the wind noise that the other one did. And then we came back, and the plan was to drive the blue one. It was a couple $100 cheaper. I got in, couldn't feel the heated steering wheel through the steering wheel cover, and didn't even drive the car. We decided to pick this one up. And I think it was something like 45 minutes later, we were out of the dealership driving on our way. It was one of the smoothest and easiest car transactions I've ever had, because I had done a lot of prep work with Hertz and done a lot of the stuff ahead of time and gotten pre-approved and all of that. And when we went to the Mesquite location, I'd done the pre-work at Bedford. When we went to the Mesquite location, we had to start all that over, and we were in and out of there quick, but this time we were out with a new car. So let me tell you some of the good things and some of the things to look out for if you're considering purchasing a used Tesla from Hertz Rental Car. So if you look on forums, people say if you're going for a rental car, check for curb rash. I'm going to tell you, they're going to have curb rash. A lot of people try auto park things, and these wheels stick out, and so they get some curb rash. I don't know if you can see it there in the shot, but pretty much every rim on this car has some of that. But I've got a video coming up that's going to show how I'm going to deal with that. But I'm not going to drive around with it showing that way, but they're gonna have that. So the car's not entirely perfect, but there's a few dings here and there, a couple of paint chips. But here's the deal. For the price of this car, I was willing to accept its imperfections, and it gives me less stuff to stress about. I don't have to worry about paint swirls. It's already got them. I don't have to worry about curb rash. It's already got it. But this car is a 2022 Model 3 base. I'll tell you why we decided to go with the base here in a minute. But it had 57,000 miles on it when we got it, and it was $22,800. minus the $4,000 federal tax credit means this was $18,800. This car was less expensive than my Bolt by about $5,000, and the only EV that we have that costs less than this is our 2018 Fiat. We went with the base because of the LFP battery. The LFP battery, lithium iron phosphate battery that these base Model 3s started getting in 2021 and that this 2022 has, they do better with heat. They don't do better with cold. They do worse with cold. So if you live in a cold environment, especially if you have like really bitter winters, may not be the best choice for you. But we live in Texas, and the LFP battery in cold only gets into trouble at around 0 degrees, and we've been there for 2 days in the 22 years that I've lived here. But heat is where the LFP is good at. It doesn't degrade as much. The battery degradation on this car could have been very high. It's 57,000 miles. It was a rental car. The chances are that this poor car has been supercharged its whole life, has been run through DC fast charging in a Tesla supercharger and not charged at home, which is better for the battery anyway. With all of that, a check on the Tessie app shows the battery health on this car was at 94.9% as soon as I got that app running. And now it's showing it's at 95% battery health. I've got 259 miles of available range at full charge from the original brand new EPA estimate of 272. And Tesla does overestimate their EPA ranges. So haven't lost much. Don't have to worry so much about having a degraded battery. Speaking of price, we're not paying any more for this car in terms of the car payment than we were for our Subaru, which we bought at a time when we couldn't put any money down and we were a little upside down in the car and all of that. But insurance was a different story. We'd been with Geico for almost 20 years, and when we added this car, our premium went up by about $355, and I was like, that's not gonna work. That was just switching this car out for the Subaru. So we did go through a different insurance provider. We went through Allstate, and that brought our rate back down to basically what it was before when we had the Subaru. Geico's argument was that the Tesla costs a lot to fix if it's in an accident because they're very easily totaled. The car's got great safety features and a great safety cage, and people walk away from accidents in these things all the time, but it's very hard to fix it. The body skin I found out is aluminum, and it takes really specialized body work technicians to do that. Plus you don't want to have any damage to the battery or any of the other electrical components. And so I understand where Geico was coming from, and I loved working with them, just not for an extra $300 a month when I could get Allstate, which is good insurance, and the same coverage for basically what I was paying before. Now I need to look into the Tessie app to get some better ideas of how many kilowatt hours I have available, but it's a 60 kilowatt hour battery if you just Google that online. And the Bolt is 65 kilowatt hours of battery. And I've made several videos about the efficiency of this Bolt. A lifetime average of 4 miles per kilowatt hour. This car has a 5 kilowatt hour smaller battery, and right now, even with 5% battery degradation, has the same 259 miles of range that the Bolt does with a smaller battery. Means it's more efficient if you look at it on paper. But how about the efficiency as it's actually calculated by each of these vehicles? The Bolt, lifetime average, 4.0 miles per kilowatt hour, over 34,000 miles that we've put on that car. Now, I've only had this car for a couple of weeks, and I put a little over 700 miles on it. I reset the trip when I got it home, and that trip odometer is calculating my average efficiency over those 2 weeks of 700 miles of 218 watt hours per mile. The Tesla does it in watt hours per mile as opposed to miles per kilowatt hour. But it's a fairly easy calculation. You take 1 and divide it by your watt hours per mile, but you put the decimal before your watt hours per mile. So 1 divided by 0.218 is going to tell me what my miles per kilowatt hour are. And right now, my average miles per kilowatt hour are 4.58 miles per kilowatt hour, making this almost 0.6 of a mile more efficient. Today is a beautiful day, and in the last couple of weeks we've had some beautiful days, 70s. We had a 92-degree day that was cranking the air conditioning. We've had some 30-degree days, and I have not yet turned the climate control off on this car. I turn the climate control off in the Bolt all the time. When it's nice temperate weather like this, I usually drive around without the AC on, and when it's cold, I run the seat heater and the heated steering wheel, and I only run the heat when I really need it. I've been able to run the heat on this car because in 2021, Tesla put a heat pump in the Model 3. This car has a heat pump, the Bolt does not. That means the heater, while it does put a hit on the efficiency, it's nowhere near as much of a hit. As far as the features on the car, like the dash cam, the Sentry cam, the AC, the way that the wheels work and all of that, been really enjoying learning how to use it and getting better at using autopilot. It takes a little bit of practice. But let me tell you a little bit of the experience after the sale that we had with Hertz. The car, being a rental car, was in a guest mode. I could scan a QR code on the screen and use my phone as a key, so I didn't have to keep using the card, the little black card. And but I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't transfer ownership or anything like that. Every time I tried to do it on the app, it wouldn't give me the access to the screen that I needed to take the next step. I contacted Tesla, which I don't know if I needed to do or not, because exactly a week later, after 7 days had passed, I bought this car on a Monday, and at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday night, I got notifications that I saw in the morning after I woke up that the car had been transferred to my Tesla account. And then everything worked great. The way home from the dealership, because they didn't give me a full charge before we left, so I stopped at a supercharger. That week, I got a message saying I owed for that supercharge. Once the car transferred, it took care of it. That got paid, it was gone. The only downside is, after ownership got transferred, we programmed in Rachel's profile. She's not as tall as me. Seat and everything's in a different position. Because I had programmed mine in guest mode, it forgot me, and I had to program everything else after that. Aside from that, no real hiccups in that process. When I'm at work, I usually come out to about 5 or 6 Sentry mode events because I park by a sidewalk in a parking lot, kind of like this, but people walk by. A couple times people have looked at the car and the Sentry mode camera has caught them. And the dash cam is going to come in handy. I've already figured out how to offload the video. I figured out how to record something specific. Like the other morning, a skunk tried to commit suicide by running out in front of me, but I missed him. You can see him there. He got away scot-free. But that's a nice peace of mind. If you walk out and something happened to your car, you can always look and see exactly what it was. And if you have friends that know that these cars have cameras there, they'll entertain you and you'll get a nice laugh. Hertz made sure that I had the level 1 EVSE, the mobile charger, before I left. And when I checked the bag, it didn't have the adapter. And I went in and I said, hey, I need an adapter. And they went, oh, let's find one. And they handed this to me. This is the Tesla manufactured adapter that goes from J1772 to NACS or NACS, so that I can charge this car at home off of my wall box, because we still have 3 EVs, the Bolt, the Fiat 500e, and the LiveWire, that all take the J1772 plug, and the LiveWire and the Bolt also have do the CCS combo. But that was it. I get home, and that's the only addition that I have to do is clip this onto my plug and plug it in. So it really doesn't take any extra time for me to charge this at home. So what about the reason that we even considered purchasing this car? That big road trip, 1,288 miles one way with the return trip, over close to 2,600 miles, probably over by the time we do it. This car is going to save us 6 hours of drive time in each direction. That's 12 hours of drive time for the entire trip that we're going to get back because we're going to be taking the road trip in this car. I got that figure from a Better Route Planner and its estimates, and that's based on how much faster this car can charge. It can peak at 170 kilowatt hours when it's at the right part of its charge curve, but mainly because the Tesla supercharger network is going to give us the advertised speed. We never worried about Electrify America derating their chargers to 50 kilowatts with our Bolt because that's all we could get. But if we went with like a 350, if we tried to use the 350s with a Kia EV6 or a Hyundai Ioniq 5 and it was derated to 50 kilowatts, then why did we buy a car instead of just taking the Bolt? This one, with the more reliable charge network, and yes, I know GM is getting close to being able to use the supercharger network, but this one is just going to be plug and play. We're good. It's going to save us so much time at the charge stops, and yes, the charging station stops will be a little bit more boring in that road trip, but we'll do our best to make them entertaining, I promise. So, after 2 weeks, I really like the car. I'm really happy with the purchase. I'm really happy with the way everything worked out. Was missing some things like missing floor mats. We've gotten those taken care of. There's a little bit of the felt inside the center console that's rubbed off. Well, I'm going to show you how I'm going to deal with that. We've got videos coming up with how we're going to make this car hide or fix the things about it that are a little less than perfect. So there's going to be some more content coming to the channel on the Model 3. But as I said in the beginning of the video, fear not, we're still going to be producing Bolt content. Elsa's still sitting right over here. So we'll have Bolt content, we'll have Tesla content, we'll have Harley-Davidson LiveWire content, Fiat content, and all things budget-minded EVs coming to the channel. If you like this video, found it entertaining, please give us a like, comments, and however you want, and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.